stable fabrics. So this current logo is intended to be sewn on a piece of spandex or moisture management garment, which is very popular today. Now, in our customers' actual sew out, you can see the distortion here where the circle is no longer a complete circle, and then we have some minor other stitch issues that are going along, and plus we've got some puckering. So to compensate for that is that even though the digitizing was done very well, where you've got some good underlay that's happening underneath all of the sections, it's not stable enough for something as stretchy as spandex, Under Armour. So we actually wind up having to stabilize everything together at once, whereas this is doing it section by section. So we can actually edit the original design rather than starting from scratch. And to start a manual underlay in Stitch and Sew, you click on digitizing, and we're going to use the freeform tool to actually draw a little running stitch or draw an outline that a running stitch will then follow. And so whenever you click on digitizing, you have these different tools that will create shapes. The freeform and the column tool lets you create custom shapes to draw your own shapes, whereas these automatic shapes are a little bit more obvious. They let you create the shape that's kind of represented there. In this case, I need to be able to freehand this, basically trace. You're not really freehand drawing. And then when I get done drawing, I want to tell the program what I want it to do with that outline. So if I choose normal fill, then it'll just fill in the area. I don't want it to fill in the area. I want it to just follow what I draw with a running stitch. So from the drop-down menu, I choose running stitch, and I'll go ahead and start drawing. And generally, if you don't have a particular place to start, generally work from the center out, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start zooming in here. We're about 300%. I want to get it down to about 600%. That way you're plenty accurate in being able to lay down your stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and also, for those of you who are following along and understand this, another recommendation I make if you're drawing running stitches in Stitch and Sew is to go to Tools and System Parameters, go to Embroidery, and uncheck Enable Editing of Curves along with for the creation of new objects. Basically, what that does is it lets me go back and forth over the same spot several times, which sometimes you need to that little ambulance pass, and then, okay, here we go. Okay, all right, so I'll go ahead and I'll start in the center here and just make an easy stitch first. I'll click once. I'm going to hold down the Control key the whole time. That will result in a straight point. I go up, then go down, and then kind of go back on top of myself here, and then just kind of walk back and forth. And what the Stitch and Sew is doing is it's following my everywhere I click with a curve, and then I'm going to actually tell it to actually walk back and I'm going to try and do this as cleverly as I can so I don't cross myself over any more than necessary. And we can always rechange this. And I know this is really hard to see, so what I'm going to do is hide the stitches so far. You can always press the letter S. You can hide the stitches, and you can see what I've drawn. So you can see I started going down, or up, then down, then around, coming across, crossing over myself. So this can actually go pretty fast. I'm just kind of moving along slowly, but really, as you get going, and when you're zoomed in very nicely, then you can actually lay down stitches fairly quickly. So I'm just, again, crossing back and forth, and I just want to stabilize every part of the design. I want to put a click in every area, and that way, because the more these stabilizing stitches I place, the more directions that this design, this fabric will be stabilized and locked down onto the backing. So that's the idea. So far you can see I'm kind of walking back and forth. Maybe it's easier if I can get in 3D mode or get out of 3D mode. No, that doesn't work. All right, now I don't want this thread to be visible over here, but one trick that I do is that instead of doing this in the color that I'm on top of, I'm going to change colors to black so that I can actually kind of walk under this whole thing. So what I'm going to do is, even though I'm digitizing this to be on top, what's going to wind up happening is that it's going to appear here in the object list at the bottom when I'm finished. I'm going to then resequence and move it to the front. So basically this just stabilizes the entire thing. Now I went ahead and finished that off, but basically what's going to happen is that now moves, we'll move that to the beginning, and that will then stabilize everything. Oh, it really actually accidentally deleted itself, so we'll go ahead and start over. I won't do the whole thing. I'll just, again, just kind of walk through. I'll just do this intersection here so we don't have to suffer through the entire thing. But basically, you're seeing I'm just kind of walking back and forth, and I'm pretending that a running stitch will then follow what I'm doing. And actually, I'll go in a different direction this time. I went across to the top of the C this time. This time I'm going to go to this part of the C. Really doesn't matter. Just think of a continuous path that you can follow without lifting your pencil, so to speak. And again, I'm going to jump outside, and so you'll see a little, I'll hit the delete key. I want to run it more at this angle, so that's a little bit less visible. And again, what we're going to do is, remember, we're going to put this in black thread, so you won't see this once the colored thread's done. So I'll just do this final circle here and finish this. And basically you're just going to do the same thing with the text. In fact, I'll just go and do this INC so you can see what I'm doing with the text. Now that we've kind of decided that we're going to go ahead and digitize this in black, sew this in black, then you don't really have to worry about it showing. But see, all I'm doing is just kind of following this down the middle. And again, all this is doing is just pre-anchoring this area of the design area to the backing, and doing it in the color of the garment. Okay, so we're done. So I'm going to go and hit stitch it to start generating what I drew into stitches, and then it's going to ask me for my entry point as sewn at the bottom. So I'm going to start where I laid my first click, and I want to end where I laid my last click. Okay, so you can now see that if you can now see this is all sitting on top. So what we can do is get out of digitizing and resequence it. To do any work down here, you want to get out of digitizing, editing, or lettering mode, and then we can then grab this and either drag it over to the front, to the first part, or if you have trouble dragging anywhere in the middle, just right-click, go to reorder, and then go to either to a numerical position. In this case, I do 1, or in this case, I just want to do start a design. Reorder to start a design. Now you can see that that's a separate block there, and I'm going to go ahead and make that black. Okay, so you can see now when I zoom out here, you can see that this is our stabilized area here. You can see that this now sews this first. So this particular area of the, it looks like somehow I missed the S somehow. So I'll add it back in and get the rest of that S. Basically, because this is here, it's stabilizing this area to the fabric, and you're not going to have any kind of you're not going to have any kind of shifting. Okay, so that eliminates that kind of distortion. All right, so so that's the first thing in digitizing for unstable fabrics. So underlay under the whole thing. And I'll go ahead and post this up with the recording, these notes. Underlay under the entire area of the design in a running stitch. Make it around 2.5 to 3 millimeters. Sequence it to sew first, preferably in the garment color. Okay. Now, another thing that I would also recommend too is that one of having to solve the puckering is make sure that you're operating at so that digitizing, and then I would actually add sewing technique to this, or prep technique, or hooping technique. So hooping. So this is kind of parenthetical. It's not really digitizing, but you definitely want to make sure you're doing this. Is hoop, so that hoop the fabric snugly in the hoop, but do not stretch it. So, because if it stretches, you can tell from our image, when you unhoop it, you're going to see these wrinkles because it's now allowed to return back to its pre-stretch area, and you get more wrinkles. So, and then also in your machine tension, this is if you're comfortable with the machine. So I'll add a disclaimer here. Use a lighter tension setting. And that means adjusting both the upper and the bobbin upper and bobbin tension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are important. All right. So that takes care of the shifting with this. Now, also look, if you look at the kind of the loops under here, some of them are due to the distortion. The digitized underlay would sew, but then you went back on top of the you went back on top with the full satin stitch, and it shifted beforehand. So this additional underlay that we added here should remove some of that. Okay, another thing that a quality issue that we're looking at is just uneven stitching in here, and one problem that I see over and over, then this has nothing to do with the unstable fabrics, is the size of some of the design elements. Actually, in this case, let's go ahead and look at that, and I'm going to zoom into this particular area here because it's sewing really rough. And you can see in the digitizing it looks really smooth. It shouldn't look uneven like that. A couple things. One thing I do is go ahead and always view your design, anything that you're going to about to sew on a grid. So go to View, Show and Hide your grid, and make your grid size at least 1 millimeter. So I'll go to Tools, Set Grid Size, and make it 0.04 inches. And just make sure your satin stems are at least 1.5 millimeters wide. In this case, they are, so they're actually pretty good. And so I think we don't have any problem here, but I might even take I would actually sew these a little bit wider. Notice that this looks pretty wide, but when we go into the actual photo, you can see that narrowed out quite a bit. If you compare the, I don't know if I can, let me see if I can lay this next to each other. You're witnessing something very, very significant here, because you're actually seeing comparison of the digitizing to the actual sew out itself, and you can see that we've lost quite a bit of width. And you can see, even though this is not a very thick fabric, a lot of width was lost because of how stretchy that is. And that narrowing width and these bulges here are because you got down too narrow. And then the other thing is that this also has 2 passes of underlay. And then anywhere that you've got a bulge or a stitch point, and let me see if I can't show the stitch points. These white dots are the stitch points here. Anywhere you've got them lining up in the wrong way, you may have some of these bulges. So I would stick to a centerline underlay and a zigzag underlay. So if I was going to do this, I'll go and recreate this satin stitch. It's very, very nicely done, but again, this is a problem that's created by the stretchy fabric. I'll just use the program's column tool, and we'll draw this. Okay, Garen's asking what is the keyboard shortcut for showing the stitch points. So that's actually the letter P. Oh, I know this is not letting me edit my stitch. Okay, I'm going to enable editing. Tool system parameters, enable editing of curves. And that lets me actually draw this, and digitizing column. That actually lets me draw this on the fly. So that's the letter P if I want to see my stitch points. So if I hit the letter P right now, you can see my stitch points right there. I'm going to, and there's the second P is a larger, and then I hit it again and it goes away. So toggle on, off, and then large and small stitch points. Okay, so continuing around.
You all right? I was tired.
Okay, so I've laid my shape out. I'll go and clean that up here.
Oh no. Man, and fucking Bob just coughs and coughs.
I've got some background here, so let me.
I am.
Okay, so this will just kind of clean this up a little bit. But once I've got this down, this is close enough. I want to compare this shape to how I would change the digitizing for it. Okay, so I've drawn my shape well enough. I don't want to have to get this perfect here, but I'll go and hit stitch it, and then in my settings, I want to go to editing, and then I want to view my embroidery settings, which is right click, choose embroidery settings. And then I want to make sure that I only have a center underlay and a fill underlay, but I don't want my edge walk underlay, which is what you're seeing in there. So I'll hit apply. I'll also get rid of my stretch, so it's basically the same size we drew. All right, now let's lay these next to each other, and let's compare them. So I've got this, and we're just going to kind of move that over, and then we're going to kind of look at the way this underlay appears next to this. So I'll lay my red next to the white that I just did. Okay, so if we zoom in on it, what we're looking at is a zigzag type underlay, which will hide itself better inside the stitches because they're closer to being parallel. And then also the these two lines of underlay are too much for the for the stretchy fabric, so it's contributing to making that bulge uneven in some places just because it wasn't stabilized. So use a zigzag or fill type underlay, centerline underlay, and you can use a fairly decent density, and that should take care of the unevenness in the fabric. So that takes care of two things. Again, the distortion is taken care of by doing an early underlay under the entire area of the design, and then number two, we're also changing the underlay here so that it's not interfering as much with this particular kind of fabric. Like normally an edge walk underlay is excellent underlay, but in this particular case, because of the unevenness of the fabric, it's moving this unevenly compared to the satin stitch on top. So I'll go ahead and take some questions now, but these again are useful for and this is useful for stretchy fabric. It's useful for flex fit hats. If any of you have tried sewing on flex fit hats, pre-sewing this early underlay is what takes care of flex fit hats, spandex, and other stretchy fabrics. So that's my short lesson on that.